discussing and approving the minutes from the April meeting. Have you guys had a chance to review those? Anybody?
Yes.
So Jeff. I need a motion. Hey, Jeff.
I make a motion we move forward with them.
Okay, I got a motion to approve the minutes. I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, any other discussion or changes that need to be made to the minutes? If not, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, amendments are approved. Next, we're going to discuss community public art event. Commissioner Brewer.
Hey, I just ran inside, so bear with me.
That's okay. Just going to start calling you commissioner, though. I like that.
That's funny. Here's a ridiculous picture of me with a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
I hate kids. I'm kidding. So I have a vague layout of what I have in mind here, and I kind of threw this together, and I thought I'd make it up on the fly. But we did, Dawn Stover and I did a project for SFA for 6 years, Sculpture for All. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. And I would like to continue this since my capacity at SFA is no longer, and I'm just an artist working. I would like to have the ability to do that in some capacity. Now, I don't want to do it with just Dawn and I because it's a lot of effort. But I would like to figure out a way that Nacogdoches could have some sort of event like this. It would fulfill our one of our goals to have public art. Anyway, here's a few slides. This, I give tours. I gave probably 100 tours over those years for Sculpture for All, and it was just about 9 or 10 sculptures throughout the gardens at SFA.
Yeah.
And the ability to bring in a small amount of work is, how can I say, it's cost effective and it's easily to change out. So you have a continuous loop of things, and it's good for a community, which I have some slides. How do I move forward? Perfect. So here's another piece that was in the Sculpture for All. This is a piece by Joe Barrington. He's a working artist out of Throckmorton, Texas. And, through support from the community, we were able to make a purchase of this piece, and it's permanently on the campus at SFA. And it's a really nice piece. And it brings a little bit of fun to the trails that isn't there. All right. So I have I have 3 little quick slides of just some of the benefits of public art and just arts in general, as far as, music. And SFA is a real boon for that. But at the same time, not everybody in the community goes to everything at SFA. So I think having other outlets is a good thing. So here's a couple of added values. You guys can read, or you can look back at this. I'm going to go on to the next slide. So the benefits of public art, or just the arts, there's health aspects, there's learning aspects, there's things for people that don't necessarily go to the next slide. There's people that don't necessarily have access to art, or don't have the ability to be in that sort of community. So here's a little bit of statistics. If you are interested and want to know more, the Texas Commissions on the Arts has a huge trove of information about this sort of thing. So if it's something you guys want to know more about, we can talk as a collective, I think, on. So go on to the next slide. Art is better to look at. Maybe not my art, but so I do these things all over the country. I do these public art calls for, this one here is a show that's in Houston at the U of H campus, and it's through the Crystal Bridges Museum of Art. And it's such a, when I do travel all these places, to see the community involvement in these things, be it a university, be it a city, it's really great that they jump in and all in at it. Go on to the next slide. This is a piece in Florida at Rosemary Beach. And like I said, these are spread out all over the country. And you can do it for a nominal fee. The more money you can bring in for stipend money, the bigger and better sculptures you get. But I understand we're limited to budget. Anyway, it's something I'd like to talk about as a collective and see how we could maybe work something out. And if you guys have any ideas, and then we can, I just want to get the ball rolling if it was something you would be interested in. If not, I'll shut up and move on with my life.
Hold on. Yeah, I've got a question. How does this tie into the city parks, Jeff?
I was trying to figure out a way that this would fit in. And I think that, a couple of years ago, I was on a committee to try to get Nacogdoches an arts district, a certified arts district. And I think something along the lines of the park, the one by the farmer's market, dog park, that would be a great venue for public art and how to incorporate it. And I know we've added a few to Pecan Park and Pioneer Park. And I know that one of our missions is to bring in public art. Go ahead.
How would the fund work? I mean,
that's not anything I have even thought about. I mean, it could be private. It could be we could do a fundraising thing. I don't know if it could be the city could be involved. That's where I'm throwing it to you guys. From Sculpture for All, Dawn and I did the fundraising outside of SFA. SFA at first wasn't on board, so I went out publicly and raised the funds. And then that was just how I did it every year. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm not a fundraiser, and this may be dead in the water, but I suspect that there are probably other people that are going to miss the show once it's gone out of SFA, and there will be a want for this sort of thing.
What kind of dollars were you doing on fundraising for the Sculpture for All?
We did a 2-year program, and so we rotated the sculptures out every 2 years, and I think we were getting away with about $25,000 every 2 years. So $10K a year.
Yeah. Okay.
Dr. Sal, kind of interject a couple comments. Commissioner Brewer, I kind of like that title too.
You guys are silly.
Makes him sound official. It was spot on when he said, one of our missions, it's actually one of the items that is addressed in our Parks Master Plan is to bring public art to our parks.
Right.
So that fits in directly there. And then also the Arts Alliance, and I can't remember, Jeff, what title it was we were pursuing several years ago with the state, and it died. I think it was because we had too broad of an area that was defined. We were trying to make too big of an area designated as that arts district. And actually, right before Jeff brought that to Hannah's attention, this presentation anyway, several staff members had said, "Hey, is this something we want to look at and investigate yet again?" And the answer was yes on our side. So I don't know if Jeff planted that seed with one of my coworkers, but it's thriving on the city staff side, and we're trying to figure out how we could actually apply this time and get approval, because we know it falls from last time. And finally, not necessarily for this board to be the fundraising arm, but if there is interest from the board, sort of the edict to the staff members is go figure out if you can do it. And then if we can come up with a way, then we would come back and say, hey, here's how the board can help, but it would not be on the shoulders of the board members to do.
Yeah.
Kind of different from the way Dawn and Jeff had to do it before, is you all say, hey, staff, go figure it out. And that's our order, and that's what we do.
Right. Well, do we have any input from the committee? I mean, I love the idea, so I'm curious to hear what others think.
Well, I'll put my input into it as well, since I was part of the original project with Jeffy. We are sorely going to miss Sculpture for All at the SFA Gardens. We don't have buy-in from the art department as it is right currently. And so if this is a way for Jeffy and I to continue this program in the city and to reach more people, I think it's a no-brainer. It was a very, very popular program with us. We were able to introduce art to people who normally wouldn't be looking at art. And in turn, we also brought people who are interested in art into spaces that they wouldn't necessarily be a part of. So it was just a really neat kind of cross-pollination of all kinds of people and interests.
That's great. Anybody else? I don't think this is something we have to vote on, but I would like to get a consensus from the group if we want to move forward with this for a few meetings and see where it goes. It sounds like the city's willing to push it forward for us. How do you guys feel about that?
I like art. I like Jeff's art. I like outdoor sculpture. I think that anything that we can do to enrich our cultural presence in the city is always a good thing. And so, especially if, I think it's definitely worth, exploring and looking further into and seeing if there's a way to make it happen.
Right. That's great.
So would the art be like a permanent piece, or would it be pieces that would rotate, like a certain amount of time they rotate through, so it's constantly changing?
Sorry, I muted myself. Yeah, there's a couple of ways to go about it. I mean, there's a million ways to go about it. I've done shows where they try to buy a piece every year to put into their program. I've been to some that they just rotate it out every 2 years. I've been to some that have ridiculous, like in the Bay Area or some of the Chicago, they'll just buy the pieces outright. It just depends on what you're working with. And then I've been to some that are in Bodunk, Salado, Texas, where they give you $200 and a shot of whiskey, and then you put a piece in and have a party. But I suspect, somewhere in between would be. We're lucky at SFA, we were lucky enough to have funds to purchase a piece every year to add to, or a piece was donated or something to that matter. But it's nice a way to build a collection of art for the community. And just, as Dawn had stated, public art is something that, be it murals or sculpture or whatever it is something that everyday Joe, I guess you guys I suspect you guys aren't art people, as you enjoy art, but you're not like stuck in this world that I'm in. It's a hellhole, the art world. That you don't get a chance to go to a museum or gallery every week or something. So this gives something that people, and especially lower income people and people that don't have any interest, it's a way to help that out.
Right.
I don't know if I answered your question. Sorry.
Is this something that would bring school, and I mean, does this bring people from out of town anyway? I mean, would it be something that kids would come to take a look at on a field trip, or it'd be like part of their stop of one of their field trips?
It has that potential. I know Sculpture for All was tied in with the Azalea Garden, so I can't give exact numbers, but I know that it was a draw. It made it in Texas Monthly. It made some, it was a pull. We had national recognition as far as artists, lots of pretty high-end Texas. Joe Barrington, the guy that did The Crow, he's a very well-known Texas artist. So there, luckily, there aren't very many of us, and I'm somewhat connected in that world. And so I have a little bit of pull, and I can call in favors and get people to come to Nacogdoches. But it does have the potential to bring some tourism. Yes.
So,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Jordan.
Oh, I was just going to say, kind of piggyback off what Michael was asking, that I volunteer at the CVB a lot on the weekend, or not a lot, on the weekends. And especially on Sundays, it's always, a challenge. People come into the CVB and want something to do around town. They just drove up from Houston or whatever, and there's not a whole lot necessarily going on because a lot of stores downtown are closed or whatever. So I do concede, as a benefit to our tourism. Maybe it wouldn't necessarily attract people initially, but it would definitely give those people that are coming to our town to check it out more things to do that wouldn't be restricted as being a store being open, that type of thing.
Yeah, it's open 24/7, and there are downsides of that, vandalism and whatnot, but it's still it is a boon. There's not a lot of downsides to having things outside. Sometimes there can be controversy over things, but if you curate it well enough, you keep most of that out.
And so, have any of you been to Abilene to see their designation as the storybook capital? I figured Jeffy at least had been. So I had the pleasure of going to a conference there several years back, and they started, I don't know, 15 plus years ago, doing exactly what Jeff and Dawn started at SFA and carried it over into the city, where they they buy at least one every year, and it's voted on by the citizens. And now they have, I don't know the number, but it's 40, 50. I mean, they're all throughout the city, and it is an attraction. It probably wasn't its first 5 years because it was relatively small. But today it is, and they're everywhere. I mean, they have them on the downtown streets. They have them on the big right-of-ways. They have them in parks. I mean, they're everywhere.
That's an SFA alum that does that. Steve Neves is his name, and he's the one that does the sculptures for the Abilene. They usually pick one specific thing, and then he builds it, and they cast it, and it's very very unique. And they also do a public art thing, like I'm talking about too. I've been in it a couple times. It's a very nice show.
Well, I mean, it sounds like we do have a consensus to move forward, Brian, and start pursuing some of these ideas. And I've been looking for a project for the group to do. It sounds like it might be a perfect one for us.
And Dr. Sal, that's all we were really needing is if there's a consensus. You're right. It's not a voting item, but if the board as a whole says, yes, we want you to pursue it, then we have our marching orders and we know where to go.
Super. Well, let's move forward if you guys are okay with it.
I say yes, move forward.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Brewer. Let's move on to the projects at the Pilgrim Sportsplex.
All right. Is everybody on here? You can just shake your heads. I can see all your faces. Are you familiar with where this is located? I know Montez is, and Christy has played out there, I'm sure. So this is the old racetrack site. You can see on the image there, you can kind of see part of the racetrack. It was an old horse racing track that went defunct. A gentleman invested in it and thought that the state would legalize gambling, and the state never did. And so it went belly up and the city acquired it. The original idea and where the Sportsplex name came from was there was a group of folks in town. Some of you may have been involved as before my time here 16 plus years ago. This was going to be the site of baseball fields, soccer fields, flag football fields, a swimming pool, a splash pad, you name it. This was what was going to be there. Well, to start off with, they built 2 soccer fields at the very front. And that's where you can see entrance improvements, restroom, new fence. Those 2 soccer fields are right up there at the front. I'd use my cursor, but I don't think y'all can see my cursor because I'm not the presenter. And so they've carried on for, like I said, 16 plus years of just 2 fields. They've been everything from a Hispanic league used them, then it was vacant, and currently we have our adult soccer program using those 2 fields. But there's really not a lot else going on out there because they didn't have lighting. We installed lighting with the help of Montez and several others just a couple of years ago. But then still there wasn't enough to draw people. There weren't restrooms, there weren't concession. And Pilgrims, local Pilgrims approached the city and said, hey, we would like a list of projects that we could possibly fund. So the executive staff sat down and we came up with a list of 20 plus items, and they were very vague. It was improvements to the Sportsplex. I mean, they were listed such as that. Another one was, build a fire training facility, build a police shooting range. They came back and said, we want to invest in the Sportsplex. So we went to work and came up with a restroom facility, new fencing along Farm to Market Road 3314, parking and security, lighting improvements, soccer netting. I know a number of you have been to soccer tournaments, but they're the big nets that are behind the soccer goals that keep the balls from going onto another field or going into a swamp in this case. So where it says soccer nets, we've proposed to have soccer nets joining right there. Thank you, Joy. Joining that whole line so that the balls don't go into the swamp that's just on the other side of the fence. I think every year there's probably 15 or 20 soccer balls that go over there that never return. We also have funds to install a scoreboard and then also improve the parking lot. So if you look on the map, this is literally just a line on a map where it's that pinkish color and the green color. Our public safety folks, fire chief, police chief, myself, city engineer, we sat down and said, how do we divide this area so that you have your public safety training area, and then we have the recreation area. And so the parking lot improvements would be for that section that's in green, which is enough to hold anybody who's attending games on those 2 fields. All in told, in February, City Council accepted a grant of $478,000 for these improvements. So we wanted to bring this for you. It's not an action item because it wasn't something that the city went out and pursued. It was a grantor coming to us and saying, we want to give you money for improvements here. Tell us what you can do. Give you an idea, the restroom, it's about $165,000. That fencing is 35,000. The parking and security lighting is another 75,000. Soccer netting, 75,000. Scoreboard, 10,000. And then the paving and parking lot striping, et cetera, is about another 130,000. I rounded, so if any of you are quick math people, yes, that exceeds the 478, but I was just giving you kind of some round numbers. Do any of y'all have any questions, comments about this process?
Well, I mean, if you're putting infrastructure in, what's the plan for the rest of the property?
Yet to be determined on the green. One of the groups that we're talking to right now about housing out there is our radio controlled flying club. They currently are living out at the airport, but with airport improvements and the terminal air plan, so it's the terminal plan is a master plan for the airport. They are going to be displaced. And so this might be, notice I didn't say it will be, it might be the perfect place for them to take over because it's wide open. They can use the old racetrack as a runway.
Yeah.
So those are the ideas that we're pursuing right now. Additional trails in the area. Beavers have dammed up the pond that was in the middle. And because the beavers are there, the alligators moved in. And because all that, we have quite the aquatic habitat. I'm not a snake fan, but there's also a very large snake population out there. And so if we decide to make this a recreation area, we have to address those before we start inviting the public to come in. So this is a long-term project.
Yeah.
That's
Any
all.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Are you also presenting the reports on recreation parks?
That would be Miss Joy Palmer.
Okay. Joy, you're up.
You have to unmute yourself, Joy. Bottom of the screen. This is the
Unmute
first
myself.
time.
Got
There
it.
we
Yeah.
go.
Check. Okay. So we have all sorts of things coming up, and things that have just happened. So we have our revenue that we have thus far for the year, and it is so far over half the revenue that we had for last year. So that's good. The pictures that you see here on the left are from Corporate Challenge. And I don't know how many of you have participated in this before, but it is a long-standing event that promotes teamwork and healthy competition between the companies of Nacogdoches. And last year, they were unable to have Corporate Challenge due to everything going on. And so this year, we really wanted to make it happen. And to make sure that we were able to do that, we had the majority of our activities, the outdoor activities, so that we could be out in the fresh air and more easily social distance and things of that nature. So we ended up third place total in the Corporate Challenge for the city. And due to some heavy rain that we have had this month, certain activities had to be postponed and some were actually ended up being canceled. But we did have 7 different companies that participated this year, and several let me know that they would be interested for next year, but they just weren't able to do it this year with their rules and regulations for their companies. So we're looking towards an even more exciting next year. So that just finished up very recently. And one of the events that we did was kickball. And unfortunately, the second day of kickball had to be canceled due to heavy rain. But there were lots of companies and people that were very interested and thought that kickball was a super fun activity. So we are planning on doing a kickball tournament later on in July. And I have confirmed that those dates would work. So for July 17th and 18th, we're planning on doing a kickball tournament. In addition to that, we put out our activity guide that you see here on the right, and that has all of the activities for the recreation as well as what the library is doing, and all the things that are going on for the summer. So we do have 2 new classes that actually did not make it into that guide because they are new as of May. And one of them is a adult swing dance class, and another one is a workout class. So those are our brand new activities that we are all starting here. And we are currently in softball registration for the summer league. And again, due to rain, the spring league is actually still going on, and they have not quite completed their championships yet, but we hope to have that done shortly. We also have adult futsal registration coming up. That starts June 7th. And the soccer, spring soccer has also been unable to finish their season for their leagues, and they are still working on finishing those due to the heavy rain. And so far, it looks like normally we would have about 49 inches of rain, but we have already had 30 inches of rain this year. So that is a fair amount of rain. So we're hoping that things can dry out a little bit and we can finish up all of our outdoor activities. In addition to that, that also goes with the rain and difficult weather, the splash pad that was set to open Memorial Weekend was damaged by a storm the Tuesday before the opening. So currently, some of the control boards are not working, and we have ordered one to replace the main board to try to see if we can get all of that working, and we're waiting for that to come in. And then once that comes in, they'll be able to better assess what needs to go next and whether it can be repaired just from that or if we need to do additional repairs as well. So the weather has created a couple issues here and there. So hopefully we are able to get through that shortly and get everything back on track. One of the places that we have for rent that is actually indoors is our Liberty Hall, and it is open for registrations and really has been booked pretty much every Saturday, almost through July, and many Sundays as well. So it's been very utilized, and I think part of that is the indoor aspect, to be able to have that for people that, you know, are trying to get away from the rain and all that other stuff. So that's pretty much everything that I have for the recreation. Is there any questions or?
All right, so that kind of leads into our park activities. Hopefully, at least some of you enjoyed the full moon concert that was in Festival Park this last Saturday. That was the Convention Visitors Bureau kickoff to the summer activities. They estimated about 700 people attended. Anytime you have a first-time event, you know, they gave away, and I don't know the numbers because they haven't calculated them yet, but they gave away to city staff and other people a fair amount, trying to draw sort of loyalty for the following ones where they hope to start making money. But that was a relatively easily put together event that drew 700 plus people downtown on a Saturday evening. So that was quite nice to see. Blueberry, we all know Blueberry is coming up. This is the busiest time for the Parks Department, which really starts as soon as the grass starts growing and the temperatures warm up. They don't stop until the winter comes. I know Dawn is shaking her head because she's kind of in that same boat. And Joy mentioned the rain. The rain has been extraordinarily hard on parks staff. Dr. Sal and I talked earlier today. It kind of goes into one of our upcoming events. This weekend is the Crushers tournament, which is the Nacogdoches Open. I had to tell them, I'm sorry, but the courses aren't going to be fully ready simply because of the rain. There's no way for us to get in there to prepare them properly. Going back even further, the winter storm damaged an untold number of trees. We had to close down our cemeteries simply because it wasn't safe to enter them. Our trails were closed for a while. And as soon as we started picking up all the trees, the rain started. And then they started shifting to trying to pull trees out of the creek so that they didn't erode the Main Street Bridge. It has been almost one calamity after another. Meanwhile, Joe Citizen says, hey, how come the trash cans are full? How come the park isn't mowed? How come that swing hasn't been repaired? Well, I mean, most of you are shaking your heads, you understand. So one of the things you can do to help is when you do hear those things, or you do talk to people and say, hey, here's why things are so backed up. Because also they're getting ready for Montez and his soccer folks. NYSA had their biggest season in, I don't know, 10, 15 years, Michael. I mean, something like that. It was 525 kids participated. I mean, that's a phenomenal number. I mean, just a couple of years ago when my daughter was playing, it was 350. And when he said that they had almost 550, I just about fell out of my chair. I mean, that's incredible for our youth soccer program, but yet that's just more work on the parks guys. I'm not saying this to make y'all feel bad and pat them on the back. It's more so that y'all have a real understanding of what it takes to go, what the park staff go through to maintain what we have. Amidst all of that, we did a couple of nice things, such as with Dawn's help, or actually with Dawn's guidance, we've planted 2 pollinator gardens. Mayor Brophy had really wanted to have the designation of the mayor's monarch, or have the mayor's monarch pledge designated for Nacogdoches. Several things, but one of the things we have to do for that is to plant several butterfly gardens or pollinator gardens. And we planted one at Moroni Park to go along with Splashadochus. And we also did one at the railroad depot. And Dawn, where's the third one? I don't remember.
The third one is on the way to Festival Plaza over across from the water department where those 5 or 6 historical markers are.
Thank you. I couldn't remember that right offhand. I didn't write that down. So that is essentially what our parks crews have been doing. And as a little side note on what it takes to put these events together, we don't have the numbers on the staff time to prepare for the full moon concert. But to give you an idea, the last time the Crushers held a tournament, it was about $2,500 worth of staff time to prepare the courses for the event, which is relatively small. And we saw a direct return on investment of about $2,500. And we weren't really good at calculating everything because we tried to do that one after the fact. Give you a comparison, that's a small event. Big events like Blueberry, it's a $30,000+ hit on the city with a return investment of about $18,000. And so one of the things that Mario, the new city manager, has us doing is tracking our expenses so that we can then figure out how to be more efficient and then say, hey, maybe we need to do more things like disc golf tournaments because it's a pretty low impact on staff with a pretty high return on investment, comparatively. So we're also working on the financial impact of what the Parks Department does. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Brian?
What type of activities can we add that are similar to the golf tournament, the disc golf tournament?
Things like soccer tournaments. We tried one, and that wasn't a softball question. I promise. We didn't plan for him to ask that question. But we did try a couple years ago. It wasn't the best organized tournament, but it was also a first time. And with the CVB's new role of really trying to promote events, and they're the event coordination arm for the city, I think it's time that we can do things, a weekend type event like a soccer tournament. Just last weekend, youth softball held a district tournament, and it was 2 days of people packed downtown. And Jason Smith, the president of youth softball, is trying to put together those numbers. But he had 10+ teams that were from out of town that spent nights in hotels. and there wasn't a lot of impact on city staff to prepare for it.
Brian, I think you know that the Crushers are planning a tournament in November that could easily have 400 players that could have an impact as well.
And one of the things that is also on our long-term plan, the capital improvements plan, is for an additional disc golf course at the lake. The Crushers have already laid it out for us. I mean, it's on, they went out and took coordinates, and we have the map of it. And as soon as we have the funds, we'll be able to build it. Well, how do you convince city council that they should invest the money to do it? Well, one of the ways is showing this, here's the labor cost and here's the return on investment.
All right. Any other questions for Brian? We have not been hard enough on him.
Yes, I have one for him. Has anybody put thought into or worked numbers on a professional type fishing tournament out at Lake Nacogdoches?
Ooh.
No, there was a tournament that came through a couple of years ago, and I can't pull the name off the top of my head or the year, but it was a professional broadcast on ESPN tournament. And the negative feedback that we got was absolutely outstanding, because citizens view the lake as theirs. And I see Michael's kind of raising his eyebrows. That was kind of how we felt too, because it's a public park and the lake isn't owned by anybody. It's open to everybody. But they did close off the west boat ramp. The east boat ramp was still open, and it brought a lot of people to town and a lot of really, really great coverage of Nacogdoches, because they also went into downtown. They took footage. So commercial breaks, they would feature, hey, here's Nacogdoches, and they showed restaurants and they showed parks. I don't have those numbers for you offhand, but yes, it's been done once and it was very successful.
And the amount of time and money that the city spent on that would, I'm assuming, fairly little.
It was, because it's kind of hard to manicure a lake. I say that jokingly, my Montez, but I mean, that's true. We on the park side, we made sure that the east boat ramp area was up to par. And then we devoted a staff person to be out there to make sure that the electricity didn't trip. And if it did, we could fix it, and that we supplied them with water. And that was our investment.
So you can imagine the numbers of people that bring in just for that weekend. Let's not even talk about the number of weekends all these fishermen do to prep coming into Nacogdoches to use the lake and the parks.
Absolutely.
And I'm assuming to do a fun type fishing tournament that would be more for amateurs, like families and stuff. We used to have one at Lufkin Industries that was the biggest catfish, the total number of fish, and things like the bunch of fun categories that a professional wouldn't even want to participate in. And I'm assuming that would probably be too labor intensive for the park staff.
Probably not. That would actually be an activity that Joy through Recreation could put together. She's shaking her head yes, I think. So, so it's really, I mean, it would be labor intensive on Joy's end, but that's a staff person.
Okay.
It would be so. I would look at it similar to our corporate challenge. It's really just going out and visiting with Turner Industries and Brewer Industries and the Crushers, and I just saw y'all's names, so I threw that out there. But it's going one-on-one to those different businesses and saying, hey, for X number of dollars, we'd like to have your team come and participate in the tournament. And it wouldn't be a fundraising thing for the city. It would simply be to cover our costs. I think that's a good idea, Michael. Thank you.
Well, there was some tournament out there last summer, and I don't know who put it on, but it was every team was a lot of dads and sons, and everybody threw in $100, and whoever caught the biggest fish got the pot. And I think a 12-year-old got several $1,000s out of that because he caught the biggest fish. So I mean, it's definitely doable. And as a lake owner, and Michael can probably speak to this too. I mean, we welcome our public out there. So that's my 2 cents. I'm for it if we go that route.
And there are a lot of tournaments that take place that don't run through the city that we are unaware of. And that was one of them that Dawn referenced, that it happened and we didn't know about it until after the fact. And it's kind of sad. We'd love to help promote them. The CVB would love to help promote that because it brings people to our town, but the citizens aren't aware that we are a resource that can help them.
Would it ever be possible to have campsites out at Lake Nacogdoches as part of a site, or we get into a whole nother realm that we don't want to touch?
Yes, it is possible. It is all, as Dr. Sal is saying, yes, vehemently.
Yes.
Yes, it is possible. You just have to have the land, and the land is what we have as the limiting factor. If we just took away all the disc golf courses out there, we'd have the land.
That's good. I like that, Brian. What about the land down around the bathroom, down by the parking lot, I mean, that could currently be used, right?
Yes, we would have to change our ordinance and install actual camping locations, because the state passed this last legislature that there is no camping
Okay.
in cities. And we have an ordinance that says there's no camping in parks. So in order to do that, we could leave the ordinance the same, but just have designated camping areas.
Very good. Any other questions or input, guys? I believe that's the end of the report for recreation and for parks, correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
And I believe I read that next meeting we're going to meet in person. Is that also correct?
Yes, this is our last time to see each other virtually. We will still have the ability. So if Jeffy really just wants to stay out there on his cattle ranch and not come see us in person, he is welcome to join virtually. But we will have the opportunity for everybody to meet in person going forward.
Well, very good. If that's all the business we have, I'm happy to close. Or do we need to do anything?
That is the end of the agenda. So we are adjourned as soon as you tell us we are.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you guys for being here. I sure appreciate it.
Thank you.
Later.
Have a good one.